What's up guys, SLOTH here, and this is the patch notes review for the mid-season patch, patch 4.13. This patch is incredibly long. We will go through it at a reasonable pace. I'm not going to try and rush it because it's too long to even rush it. We'll talk about everything, get yourself a drink or something to eat, and pause the video in between when it gets too long. We're starting with the skins. We got Kuzenbo. Pretty cool skin in my opinion, looks really nice in-game. The first, in my opinion, decent skin for Kuzenbo. Then we got a Daji skin with a similar theme to an already existing Bellona skin. Also very nice. Really cool about this skin is what you see here in the background, this neon light, whatever you want to call it, totem. Which, when she uses it, it flashes up, and it's her ultimate, and it also plays music, which I think is really cool. Then we have a new Freya skin, kind of like whatever you want to, somewhere in the Mass Effect section, Star Wars, whichever you want to put it in. Kind of similar to some skins she already has. It's okay, in my opinion. Cupid gets a skin where his head is like 3 times the normal size. I feel like you can't even see that really in the card art because his head always looks big, but apparently it's super sized with a weird voice pack coming along with it. This is going to be a kind of a, I guess it's going to be a rare skin. I'll talk about how you get it later, I think it's going to be explained. Then we have a Krononos skin. Skin is, in my opinion, a really good skin, even though I don't like Krononos. And what's really interesting about the skin is that because of how it's designed, you will see very, very easily which stance you are in. So you don't really have to look at your passive meter if you ever need to check back on it, as your whole character is basically colored in the stance you're in. Obviously means that the enemy sees it easy as well. So, a bit of a thing of taste. I would probably like it if I'm playing that character. And then we have the mastery skins for Kukulkan. And that brings us past the skins. We can actually check out the voice packs. Little heads up here, voice packs tend to be loud. So if you are on your headphones or something, watch out. This might be loud for a second.
It has been too long. This planet will become mine.
All right, that's Kuzenbo for you.
Why isn't this a passion pit of sorts?
Daji.
I am here to spread peace. If they don't cooperate, we will show them what it means to be free.
Freya.
Ready or not, here I come.
That Cupid voice pack. And that's the voice packs that we have. And with that, there's a Daji dance mode. There's an avatar that should be called a SLOTH avatar, which I really like. And we have the Summer of Smite. Summer of Smite has been a thing, I think, for 2 years, if I recall correctly. A lot of skins coming up. We can already kind of see some of them here. This is Kukulkan, this is Bakos, this is Morrigan, this is Shibalanke, and I'm not quite sure this could be Nu Wa or Daji. I'm not entirely sure what this is. But yeah, those skins will be in later patches. Right now, we're getting an aquarium pedestal, which is literally like an aquarium under your character in the lobby. We're getting the Kuzenbo and the Foxy Lady Daji. That actually means that it's not a Daji skin for sure because she already gets one, but whatever it may be. And, sorry, that was my phone. And then we have Project Olympus. Project Olympus is actually a big thing. A good thing. Hopefully some that will, like, go through quite clean. There will probably be quite a few issues with this, knowing how bigger dispatches like this usually work. And that's why it's kind of getting a beta phase first, from what I would call it at least. And we talk about the details at the end of the patch notes, for those who are interested. For now, we're just going over what's coming in this patch. There are graphical engine updates to DirectX 11. This is a beta for now, and this should definitely improve the performance of the game. I think currently Smite's running on DirectX 9. There was an attempt to run it on DirectX 11 in a much earlier patch years ago. Didn't work out so well. Now it's gonna be tried again and hopefully work out better this time, because it would really work in regards to optimization. It's just, you know, newer. I'm not sure if it's called an engine, but performance-wise, it definitely should be a huge step in the right direction. The interesting thing, it says that additionally this unifies our rendering codebase between PC and console, allowing for any future performance improvements to benefit all our clients. There is this thing that's been teased that the Xbox Xbox, what's it called, the new one, Pro version or whatever, it's gonna get a 4K resolution, and this is probably what this is aimed at least partially, as we will probably see that on PC as well then. And there's another change that goes in line with that. And for now, you can turn it on by checking it and restarting your game, and then it works. But there will be issues. Like for now, it will have higher memory usage than it should have, and the memory usage will be optimized later on the road. And if you have issues, you should probably not use it for now. There's also a high-resolution texture pack, again, which is stated to be especially useful when using a 4K display. You can also download this basically into your launcher, and it will be turned on when you set the game detail to maximum. So definitely a nice plus for higher end engines. And as soon as I as soon as I get my new PC, I'm definitely gonna run that. There's a comparison image here actually, so we can actually look at that, which I think is interesting. I hope you can see that well. We let that load real quick. So this is without the texture pack, and this is with the texture pack. You can see some tiny differences here in how I'm actually feeling like the images are swapped. I would say this is with the texture pack, and this is without, so probably just the wrong way around, because there is quite a bit of detail here in the small things. I'm not quite sure how well you can see that on video. And then there is also resolution scaling. At values below 100%, the in-game resolution will decrease, providing improved performance, while the UI will stack at a higher display resolution for legibility. At values above 100%, you can use additional GPU power to render the in-game resolution higher than your display resolution. This provides improved anti-aliasing, which looks especially good in motion and provides more fine-grained detail. Again, okay, so the without of the second. So my expectation here was correct. Without is on the second image, so we start with the without image. This is the without image, and zoomed in, this is the with image. I gotta say that detail is a lot harder to see in comparison as opposed to the other changes, but I think it's just the overall change between everything that you see that will make a big difference. Then we have parallax occlusion, and I cut this short because we have a lot to go through. This gives like more depth to certain textures, like ground cracks and stuff like that. Looks really good as well. And there's going to be 64-bit client, meaning that you can use more than 8 GB of RAM, which is probably going to be important for the 4K resolution. And it may do more than just that. It just may run better on 64-bit systems. I'm not too well versed in it, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be helpful as well. So a lot of things coming at once that should overall improve the performance. Once again, this is something that you need to do in the launcher and activate and apply, and then it will work. Probably something you should try out though, at least. Then we have prestige levels. Yes, we're still not at balance. Prestige players now have access to levels above level 30 with a new level cap of 160. And therefore there is, first of all, there's an experience requirement adjustment to level 1 to 30. And apparently, it's really hard to hit level 160. It's only 100 people in the game that have done that. So people who really play this game a lot, considering how many pros play the game a lot already, and there's a lot more than 100 pros across the time of this game. Players can show their current prestige level on the avatar border, on their home screen, on the new loading screen. And there are 7 new achievements for reaching prestige milestones. It was like, whatever, follower, acolyte, LR, ethereal, divine, immortal, godlike, ultimate, for whichever level you reach here. Also interesting. And there are wisdom tab updates. This one is probably, in my opinion, not quite what I was hoping for, but it says that this is the first step. So for now, all gameplay tutorials videos have been updated. These features, these feature revamped scripts with more relevant information and better visuals to convey ideas to new players. However, this is the first step in our revamp of the Wisdom tab. In future updates, we'll be adding more information to help new players become have better resources to learn Smite. What we see for now is basically kind of similar to the old thing, only that it's updated videos basically, which I fear are gonna be outdated very soon afterwards if no one, constantly takes care of that. And it's quite a bit of effort to update that, and I would really hope that in some way the Wisdom tab, now called Learn tab, will allow external resources as well. Hi, it's me. Then there are Triumphant chests. Triumphant chests are a new system coming to Smite that will reward players for winning games every week. The system does not replace any login or first win of the day bonus and is simply in addition to those features. Long-time players, especially blah, 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 blah. So, you can get extra chests by winning games, but only up to... Okay, I'll just read it out because it's really weird to explain as well. After a win, you will receive a Winners, Champions, or Heroes chest, each containing an increasingly rare item. You will begin with 4 open slots, and once a chest is received and opened, the slot will become locked until it resets on Tuesday. So you only get these 4 chests per week. You can unlock a slot early through extra favor or gems. This means you can get your chests earlier if you want that. If you want to like rush all the wins in one day, as far as I understand that. Because it seems to work whichever game you're winning off and not just like first win kind of oriented. As you open more chests, you will begin working towards unlocking a godlike chest. A godlike chest is earned after opening a combination of 20 plain, heroic, and ornate chests. And which is weird because up there they call it Winners, Champions, Heroes chest. I don't know which names are whatever now, but it will contain the rarest items, including the new exclusive Hetero Heroes Cupid skin. And that's the skin that we saw above with the massive head and the deep voice. I think there are also some other skins that you can get in there as far as I've seen it. What they opened on the stream was literally a Worshipper booster chest. But it's something extra on top of what we have for free. So, yeah, I guess it's going to be very hard to get the Head Over Heels Cupid skin, kind of like SPL Bellona maybe. So, we'll see how many people actually end up with that. I think it's a cool idea overall. Encourages people to actually play. Bug fixes, miscellaneous, just something that is actually more impactful than it sounds at first. Fix an issue where god walking effects could be seen through the fog of war. If you think, for example, of Ra or of, I think Thoth is one of those, a lot of them have like very visible animations. I'm not sure if it's always the walk animation, sometimes the ability animation, but not being able to see them anymore. I also think this might be true for jump stamps. Means that it will be a lot harder to spot certain guards out from further distance, which, you know, is pretty strong. Because I know this was utilized by a lot of players to just try and spot out enemies before they know what's happening. Then there is the change that you can now see all the game mode queues when you click the normal queue. So Siege is no longer hidden, which is also nice. And there's a little fix to column, which is not really relevant. Map balance. Also a lot. Quick time to drink here in between. The general idea here is to slow down the game and slow down Snowball a little bit. So, first, general. There is a global audio to indicate when the Gold Fury and Fire Giants have been defeated. So, like Portal Demon. The interesting thing is that T-Screen was partially removed because of that back then, because you could tell that way if a Gold Fury or Fire Giant had been killed. Now you can hear it. So I guess we could have got T-Screen that way, but then again there was a T-Screen crash, so whatever. All lane minions now meet at 30 seconds. This is important as it means that the middle lane minions meet when the jungle camps spawn. This may overhaul the meta as a whole. I don't know if it what it will lead to, but it will definitely do something, because I can definitely see somebody trying out a different start now. You know how in duo lane, it's not uncommon at this point to start at red buff and then from there on go into lane, because the minions clash so late. In middle, they're still going to clash faster because the lane is shorter. Like, they're still going to no, they're not going to clash faster. They're going to advance faster towards your tower, because the distance between the middle point of the lane and the tower is shorter. But you may be able to get some XP, especially because the distance from the speed buff, for example, to the mid lane, or it's shorter than the distance from the red buff to the duo lane. So there is a point to be made here for starting in the jungle, maybe even like jungler and mid laner in the jungle, and then go to middle, which would be very interesting. And the first brute minion will no longer appear till third minion wave, so it's a little bit easier to clear the waves, which means that those who have a clearing advantage early may actually benefit a little more, because most clearing advantages come from like line abilities, like, you know, like a raw beam or something. Whereas the gods that usually have bad clear are those that were more AA focused. And the AA focused ones just don't have the ability clear as somebody else would. But the AA focused ones are often able to kill the brute minion easier, as, you know, they can deal high damage to a single target relatively quickly. So like Arachne, for example. And if the brute minion is not there, that means that you're much better off with 2 line clear abilities that just take out the wave like pretty much entirely as fast as possible. So I don't know if that's a good change in the end or not, but we'll see. Jungle adjustments. Fire elementals, decreased XP, increased health. That's, I think, the small one, yes. Fire elemental, Elder Fire elemental, decreased XP as well. So a total loss here of 10, 20, 45 XP. Oracle, decreased XP by 20. Mini Cyclops, increased health from 90 to 160. This goes for all the Mini Cyclops, which is actually pretty damn crazy. Mid Harpy, increased XP reward by 3. Well, holy friggin' 3. Gold Fury XP decreased from 100 plus 10 per minute to 50 plus 5 per minute. So that's XP on the Gold Fury as well. It's a Gold Fury. This is a heavy hit to jungle farm. There was a lot of farm in the jungle. The farm was shared a lot. Now, jungles are gonna hang around lanes more again, I guess. So I don't really see why there is so much amplification for junglers with a little downside. The point that was being made here was that assassins can clear the jungle faster, whereas like others do not have that potential to the same degree. Like warriors are not able to clear as easily solo. Something interesting I just read in the chat, thank you for pointing it out, we will. They increased the XP by 3, so you can clear mid and 1 mid camp and you hit level 2. Actually unaware of that, but I would still feel like you would go to your buff camp anyways, and you would probably do that before you look at the mids. So not sure if that's something you want to do, unless you really value the XP over the buff and you just want to get that level 2, get the pressure again, and get the buff afterwards. But yeah, definitely worth pointing out. Overall, XP loss and more health, and I feel like a lot of assassins at the moment aren't even geared that well for clearing the jungle. Some are, like Ne Zha definitely is, but some that aren't performing so well will really suffer. Like, especially the single target damage dealers will not really do well with the mini Cyclops having more health, so the damage being split across more targets again, so more hits on more targets. It's gonna suck for them, honestly. So, don't know about that. But we have tower adjustments. Increased health of tier 2 tower from 2,000 to 2,500. Increased health of the Phoenix from 2,000 to 3,000. Increased respawn health of the Phoenix from 5% to 25%. So you actually have to nuke it down again after it respawns. Increased max health of a Phoenix when it respawns from 40%, I think it's 50% actually, I'm surprised here, to 70%. That means that a Phoenix that respawns and heals up will now pretty much, I think, even have more health than a Phoenix used to have at full health. Even if it doesn't fully heal up to the 3,000, it still heals up so much that when it had 2,000 before, it should like end up around the same value, and that's pretty damn crazy. Like that's huge in terms of like comeback potential when your Phoenixes are down. And I'm quite surprised by this decision. No, it's a little less, but it's around the same health anyways. So yeah, you basically have to kill an entire Phoenix again, like at its current health standards after killing a Phoenix when it respawns and you let it heal up. And then we got Siege. Siege gets some map improvements regarding the performance, and it looks different with the trees. It looks really nice. The pre-game time is reduced from 90 seconds to 60 seconds. Very understandable, as this always... you were standing there waiting for that buff thing, and there was nothing to do. Different from other maps, there was literally nothing to do. Makes invades a little hard, that's it. When a Siege Juggernaut is defeated, the team now gets 75 XP and 100 gold, a little bit of a reward there. And there are pre-game jungle timers, not exactly sure, that's showing when they're spawning. Jungle adjustments, change the purple to a yellow movement speed buff, so no more attack speed buff. Increase the white Juggernaut's max health scaling by 20%, so harder to kill later. The wild Juggernaut now regenerates health over time when unleashed, so you cannot just leech it back and forth as easily. And a bug fix for you for the ricochet. that's it for Siege. Quite a few changes that will impact the map a little bit. And Clash gets some XP spooling decrease, which is nice because that actually rewards people for farming a little bit in that mode. You're still not going to have farm, but I guess this is good overall. And Joust gets a gold spooling decrease to 6 gold from 8. And that finally brings us to the items. Hastened Fatalis removed from the game. Goodbye. No one's gonna miss you on Hunters except those Hunters who played it. We are seeing 2 other items though that will make up for that, which we look at right now. Hastened Katana. This item has a bit of everything. Hastened Katana is building of 10,000 fold blade. As such, you will see that obviously has to have a little bit of power, as you know, that's standard for that tree. 2,400 gold, still the new price. 10% movement speed, 25 physical power, 25% attack speed. Hitting an enemy with a basic grants haste for 1 second, causing you to be immune to basic attack movement penalty. This doesn't have the flat pen anymore. Instead, it is a bit of power. It does have less attack speed than most of its iterations, but it's still not a terrible value by any standard. And if there's one character that I think of with this item more than ever, it's Kali. This item is more expensive still. It's 2,400 gold. But Kali is one of those who has this hybrid potential between going into Heartseeker early on if she wants to, because she has that ability damage if you like start a Bluestone. And if you're going Heartseeker, you're going to have that early burst with that. And you can also decide at that point if you feel like, okay, I'm just going to try and snowball as hard as possible and not going to look for the ability damage. You know, I'm already building into this tree. I'm going for Hastened Katana instead. I'm going to get my movement speed right away because I was already building Heartseeker, so why the hell not? And the power will also help her, obviously, with the 2 damage. And as such, I do think that Kali is like the one who benefits the most. But there are others, obviously, who would like to see this change as well. I think for Bakasura, with his true damage, he didn't benefit all too much from pen and just having a little more damage between the basics. You know, I have to check out the exact numbers for like pen versus physical power here, depending on the circumstances and everything. But I think generally speaking, it's not necessarily bad for most. I would hope that the item would be a little cheaper, but especially if we're looking at Enchanted Hastened Ring, which is the next one, which is cheaper and it's so mages. So I'm like thinking like, why is this more expensive? But generally speaking, it's a better item for melees, I would say. And then we have Hastened Ring. Hastened Ring is the magical version for basically specifically Freya, Sol, and Kronos. This builds off Enchanted Ring. You will see a lot more of that ring tree in general, I think. 2,300 gold, 50 magical power, 25% attack speed. Obviously, magical power is higher here as magical power needs to be higher in order for the mages to get their performance going. And 7% movement speed. If we have like a direct comparison here, the key difference between those two in this regard is 3% movement speed and 100 gold, whereas I would say like 50 magical power is pretty much the same as 25 physical, depending on the situation really. But the passive is different. Hitting an enemy god with a basic attack and haste for 4 seconds, causing you to be immune from basic attack movement penalty for the duration. Internal cooldown is 30 seconds. So this works completely differently. This works like Kronos 2 used to kind of, where for 4 seconds you just completely ignore the basic attack movement speed penalty. But after 4 seconds, you're back to normal. After 4 seconds, you're done. You have those 4 seconds and that's it. So I think especially Kronos will utilize this very, very well. If you hit someone and you like smack down your 2 and just go for it. Sol, I don't know. We've seen a lot more power builds on Sol anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised if people like kind of don't like it that much. And Freya will need it anyways, but for Freya it might be a bit of a heavier hit. Then again, it will like, you know, you activate the 2 and then hasten procs on the first hit. You just need to blow them out in 4 seconds. So it can work for you as well. But doesn't, especially for Freya, I think it doesn't allow her to snowball as much through a team fight in late game as you would see from her usually. Whereas with Kronos, I can see that a little more. He never depended like as much on hasten with what his kit offers in general. And that brings us to Hunter's Bow. Hunter's Bow, just an in-between item, builds of short bow, 10 physical power, 20% attack speed. The reason this exists is Atalanta's Bow. Atalanta's Bow builds off Hunter's Bow, 2,300 gold, so same price range. I don't know, wait, immediately wanted to head to get that 100 extra gold, but well. 30 physical power, 20% attack speed. No direct movement speed, but a passive hitting basic attacks increase your movement speed by 7% per stack. Stacks up to 4 times, lasts for 2 seconds. So, up to 28% movement speed. No, you should not skip boots because this is only when you hit someone with basics and not when you hit the air. So, if you want to rotate anywhere, you kind of need this. Like, the only one who could, like, justify not building it is maybe Jingwei. And then instead, you just want to keep shooting, keep hitting, and you keep your movement speed. You have to keep in mind that this movement speed, I'm pretty sure it's still affected by movement speed penalties, as basic attack penalties are, and you're not gonna feel as fast as someone with haste and Fatalis who doesn't get the penalty at all, because the penalty is usually pretty high, and you need to hit those shots for the stacks first as well. The 4 hits on an enemy, in many situations that means that the enemy should pretty much be dead as a hunter, depending on the item build you have and everything, unless it's a tank. So with that only lasting 2 seconds as well, you gotta play it right. And I'm not quite sure if I would build this. I may be underrating this item because movement speed is a nice stat, but 2,300 gold, whereas you could get a Kaivel for 600 less and still do a lot. Is that even true still? But, you know, you get the idea. I'm not sure if it's worth the trade-off, but the stats on the item are not terrible. I don't see it being the most popular one, though. Then we have Toxic Blade. Oh, worth pointing out, by the way, this is not just for hunters. Melees can build this as well. So if you're looking to build this in combination with Hasten Fatalis, the new Hasten Katana, for example, this is a whole different story because you can get really fast with a really low number of items. If you get boots and Hasten Katana and this, you don't need any more movement speed. You're all set and you're really fast and you still have a lot of attack speed and power from that. Like, not a lot, but a decent amount. So I see this probably more on AA Assassins actually than on Hunters. And that brings us to Toxic Blade. Toxic Blade, kind of bringing back a Poison Star, I think, originally. Builds of Adventurous Blade, though, and it's more flexible in how you can use it. 2,200 gold, 100 health, not that much, but a bit. 10% movement speed, 20% attack speed, 10 penetration, and hitting an enemy with basic attacks gains a stack of 20% reduced healing, stacks up to 3 times, lasts for 5 seconds. This is awkward. This item has a bit of everything, and I don't know where to put it. I feel like, you know, with the attack speed, movement speed, a little bit of penetration, you know, I'm thinking Hunters, I'm thinking AA Assassins, but then again, the stats, like, you pay a lot for the movement speed here. 100 health is not that much for that price, so a lot of it goes into the anti-heal. I feel like this is something you want to invest into when there are a lot of healing enemies, and you feel like the options that you have at the moment are not going to help enough. Like, say you are in a team with someone who has the Divine Ruin, someone has Pestilence, but you don't really have a character who would fit a Brawler Speed Stick in their build in a good way. Then they could opt into Toxic Blade. But with this irritating stat bloat, I'm really not sure if the item is good or bad or something in between. Like, it's not a typical damage item, but it's also not a typical tank item. It's like this hybrid situation where we'll just see how well it performs. Shaman's Ring gets a redesign, and it's an evolving item now. These items, basically, they stack over time under certain conditions and then transform into a fully stacked items. It actually looks different then, and sometimes, like in case of Shaman's Ring, it gets a completely new passive. So, Shaman's Ring itself, 2,200 gold, 60 magical power, 10% movement speed. Not the greatest stats on its own, just especially comparing it to our new magical Hastened, basically. Hastened Ring. Then there's the passive, though. Dealing 100 damage to enemy guards gives you stacks. If at 50 stacks, so a solid 5,000 damage, which you will reach if you play a mage of any sort. Shaman's Ring evolves, gaining a new passive that allows the wearer to deal an additional 10% damage to targets hit by the wearer's abilities. So basically you mark someone with an ability and then follow it up with another ability, and that deals more damage. That means that this is most beneficial for either someone who has like an ability with multiple ticks, multiple instances of damage that are not like falling off hard, or someone who uses CC before they engage, like say for example Scylla. And both get a drastic damage increase, though I'm not sure if with the stats it's enough to justify building it. 10% extra damage is always hard to like place. Percentage damage can be very, very good. But also it's just, for that price, it's just 60 power and 10% movement speed, whereas you get like Bancrofts with ridiculously higher amount for a similar price, for example. And that brings us to the Relic exchange. I'm actually surprised they're in between, but we will see. First of all, Aegis Amulet no longer cleanses roots or slows. Neither does the upgrade. That's it. And I think that's fair. Aegis Amulet, for those of you who remember it, used to have two different versions. One that gives you damage reduction when you stood still, the other one that allowed you move. And back then I felt like it was probably in its most balanced state, especially the non-moving version. Now you can move still, but it's no longer cleansed. So if you want to cleanse stuff, you need your beads. And if you just want to survive, you need your Aegis. And I think that's very, very fair. Blink Rune. This one is an old logo, apparently. And this one is an interesting buff. We have two changes here. We have Blink Rune decrease the cooldown from 120 to 100 seconds, meaning you can use it quite frequently, quite early in the game. For aggressive plays, this is quite strong. Think Gap, think Hunbats. That's pretty impactful. Blink Rune upgrade remains on the same cooldown, but after blinking, you take 10% reduced damage for 2 seconds. Not so important for those who use their CC right after and don't take damage anyways. But for any support, for example, that engages with Blink and does not hit all targets or is at the risk of being blown up by, say, Sylvanas wants to blink in, use ultimate, but there's Poseidon at the side of the area and you can't reach him, you know you won't reach him, and you know he will crack in you the moment you blink in. You have 10% reduced damage now the moment you came in, and that's very helpful in that regard. So, a buff worth mentioning as well, and I would say overall will bring Blink more back into the meta. Brace of Undoing gets the change that was leaked. The health and mana restoration within the last 5 seconds is increased from 50% to 60%. However, the cooldown reduction on the abilities is completely removed from the base version. The upgrade version has the same cooldown now as well, and this goes for pretty much all relics. Like almost none has a cooldown reduction, if any at all. I think the Aegis may have one. And the cooldown reduction, like the 3 seconds subtraction, are on the upgrade now. That's definitely a hard hit for Bracer. If you look at Bracer and what it does, or where it stands, like the big benefit of it is like the switch between aggressive usage and defensive usage. Having to upgrade this and pay a lot for it to get the aggressive usage out of it hits the item. And we have so much stronger items now that I feel like Bracer is a bit out there. Cursed Ankh upgrade. Decrease the healing reduction from 65% to 50%. New cooldown is 120 seconds. But this one I did not expect to go through at all. I'm very surprised it went through, and this is only on the upgrade, which is worth pointing out. What happens is, enemies afflicted by Cursed Ankh have their mana cost increased by 20%. This was originally in the League patch note, there was a flat value. A percentage value I think is much better. It doesn't hit guards that just generally have low mana builds, for example, because they utilize very low amounts of mana. For example, I don't know how this would have worked or will work for Cuchulainn anyways, but if it was a flat value for Cuchulainn, it would have hit him super hard with this item, because you could have like not used your abilities anymore without losing rage. And the way it works now with a percentage, it's not that bad. Also, the cooldowns of abilities fired while afflicted are increased by 2%. So if you use their abilities beforehand, they're not going to be affected. And as far as I understand it, and or maybe it's the other way around. I think what how it is to be understood is that if you use an ability while under the effect, you will have an increased cooldown on that ability. The duration of this item is quite long. I'm not sure from the top of my head how long, but it's quite long. So you wanna consider if you wanna you know, pick a fight when someone uses Cursed Ankh. And that's the thing. Cursed Ankh has to be used early, otherwise the effect kind of goes void. So the enemy team will engage and use Cursed Ankh. And that's the moment you're probably best off just getting the fuck out and being like, oh, that's a 120-second cooldown Relic, goodbye, and then go in again once it runs out. If you can afford to do that, if you're able to do that. If you're not, well, good luck to you. Because you're gonna have long cooldowns across all abilities, and if you don't blow the enemies up within like a very short time frame, like on the initial engage, they will blow you up because you don't have anything you can use against them. And the hard part here, which I dislike, is that it's 2 seconds. So this will hit certain guards very, very hard, while it doesn't hit others nearly as hard. Like say, it will hit a Willish or Habois super hard between the 1 and the 2. Those abilities, you want to like not spam them, but use them very often. Raven. Whereas others with longer cooldowns that just blow you up in one go, like Scylla. Scylla's not really gonna care much. She's gonna kill you anyways, you know? So I dislike the 2 second value, and I would prefer a percentage or maybe ignoring ultimates or something. But that's just me. Heavenly Wings gets the sprint treatment. It is now slow immune. Again, no longer just cleansing slows. The upgrade version gets 140 seconds cooldown as well. And the upgrade is the same here in that regard that they're slow immune, but obviously you get the hasten Fatalis effect here, which means you have a full team of hasten Fatalis guards with slow immunity, and that will bring sprint back against certain comps for sure. And this is actually a nerf to a lot of the guards that would have otherwise gotten stronger this patch, like melee AA guards. I will talk about them a lot this patch. Horrific Emblem. I don't know how this went through. Horrific Emblem upgrade. Increased cooldown from 90 seconds to 130 seconds. So you can't spam this. But enemies afflicted by a Horrific Emblem deal 20% less damage to all targets. And they are still slowed. And that is just... it screams Osiris. Osiris uses this on you. You're slowed. You can't get away from him. You deal less damage, he uses a 3, you deal even less damage, and you're still slowed, so you're gonna get hit by the 3 anyways. Do that in a team fight, and what is the enemy team gonna do? Like, you walk, you can literally, you can ult into them, and assuming that they don't have escapes, assuming that you somehow force out the escapes, you will literally just use Horrific Emblem into the 3, and you have a secure kill on whichever squishy you choose. Maybe even 2, because you're gonna be slowed, and they're gonna get stunned, and if you are, and they are not gonna be able to deal damage to you and punish you, and if you're not able to kill them after that, I don't know what. You probably don't have a team that deals enough damage. So that is super scary. It is only on the upgrade, which is worth pointing out, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid of this upgrade. Magic Shell. Magic Shell and Meditation are always a math problem for players. So, Magic Shell actually gets its shield. AoE shield at the rate of 100 plus 15 health per level. Meaning it was, I think, 400 in total. Shield lasts for 3 seconds. And this is crazy, in my opinion, as well. This is a very strange way. Like, obviously, depending on the situation, this can be worse, can be better. But it's just so strange to me that you would just pop a shield on an ally, or like many allies around you, very, very easily. The shield, for example, can be used against a Kraken. If you see a Kraken coming out of the ground, you just pop the shell, and everyone around you will take less damage from the Kraken. So you can definitely support better with this, I feel. But it's not my favorite kind of way of treating this item overall, to be honest. Magic Shell upgrade also gives allies 2 block stacks throughout the duration. These stop up to 2 basic attacks. That I think is absolutely crazy. Again, any AA guard is getting hit pretty hard here. Mages don't really care about this too much, but I do not want to have more block in this game. Block is already super tedious to deal with on Bellona, on Athena, and I really hope that this would not make it through, and didn't think it would make it through. I'm actually surprised how many of the league changes made it through, because this one is rough, and this one is gonna suck no matter who you are, as long as you have AAs. This is gonna suck if you're somebody who's just looking. I'm not even sure if you would still apply effects like frostbound through a block. I'm actually not sure if that works, but it's definitely gonna suck for anyone who has crit, because you know your heavier hits are just not gonna matter because they get blocked. It's gonna suck for anyone who just needs to burst you down even with like quick AAs, because just 2 AAs can make such a huge difference in that regard. Say, you know, any AA assassin really. It will suck for, it will suck for Hunters, it will suck for Murky, it will suck for Kali, it will suck for Bakasura. It will suck for even Nemesis. Like, if you try to burst someone down, even though she's geared a little differently, just that little bit of extra damage to the AA cancel. Anyone who AA cancels is not gonna be able to do much against this, and that's just crazy. So I think Shell is gonna be very high up there for support relics, and I don't like the way it's done. Meditation. Remove the HP5 MP5 buff. A new effect. Applies the buff to yourself and allies for 5 seconds. It causes mana cost to be decreased by 30% and have the cooldowns of ability fired while buffed decreased by 1 second. Not quite as impactful in my opinion, as it doesn't cleanse the cooldowns of abilities that you already used. So basically, you want to... Like, usually you use a meditation after you lost your health, right? And usually at the point where you lost your health, you have used most of your abilities. Mana cost, yeah, okay, sure. Apparently this is a mana-focused item now. And maybe in its own right, it's the counterpart to the mana cost increase on the other item. But that in return also gives you a healing decrease. So why would you use a healing item under the effect of a healing decrease? That's just not making sense, unless I'm mistaking the passives right now. And that means that the decrease, the CD is the cooldown decrease here is just not gonna do as much. It's just 1 second, and you can use it to decrease the cooldown of your escape 1 second afterwards. So I really don't see the logic here. Phantom Veil. Phantom Veil removed 40% crowd control and knockout immunity for allies affected by Phantom. Really unfortunate. I like that effect. I'm sad. But, you know, we're just nerfing an item that wasn't really picked up in the first place. And the upgrade version. 150 seconds cooldown. Same thing removed. Instead, allies affected by Phantom Veil now take 15% reduced damage for 5 seconds. This is weird because, you know, Harris said that, you know, the whole protection percentage stuff is hard to understand and follow. And they take it away from Shell. Instead, they just put it on Phantom Veil and remove a much easier, understandable, clear passive, such as the crowd control and knockup immunity. Crowd control reduction, knockup immunity, more specifically. So, why? Excuse me? I think I need to sneeze, or not. Tricked you. And as such, I'm very irritated. I get the idea that it's supposed to do something for you as well, when you're not understanding that you're under the effect of Phantom, if you're like in that Odin circle and you just don't get it. But the cooldown is increased, so that's an Odin buff, because the main point with Odin is you force out Phantom Veil and just use your ultimate again before Phantom Veil is off cooldown, and next time they're not gonna get out. And the damage decrease in that regard is minor, so I think Phantom Veil actually got a nerf more than anything, even though it wasn't picked up before, and I don't like that. Though, once again, 15% damage reduction is strong. It's very strong, and you could also combine this with, which one was Horrific Emblem, for even more damage reduction. And that is where it becomes very, very strong. I just find that it's awkward to put it on an item like Phantom Veil, which already has its long cooldown and everything. But that's that. And then we have Shield of Thorns upgrade. Shield of the Underworld is back. Cooldown increased 220 seconds. But enemies can lifesteal from the user for 50% of their total lifesteal. So 50% lifesteal reduction. I like it. Punishes hunters very hard for shooting you. And I think that's a fair way. Like, with Shell, you have block stacks on everyone around you. Whereas with Shield of Thorns, let me quickly check, just so I'm not saying bullshit. Yes. With Shell, you're getting the block stacks on everyone around you. Shield of Thorns just punishes an A-guard for specifically attacking you if they have lifesteal. And lifesteal is not even used much at the moment, so I think that's totally fine. It's mostly punishing the guards that have lifesteal in their kit, and no one complains about that, am I right? And then we have Sundering Spear. Sundering Spear. Change damage dealt from 32 damage per 12 damage per level to 15% of the target's current health. Remove the debuff that caused the target to take increased damage. Sundering Spear upgrade. Change damage from to 50% of target's current health. Increase damage taken debuff from 15% to 20%. And I don't know why we're doing this. Obviously, this takes away a fair bit of the early game potential of this item. 15% of the current health, yeah, can be good, depending. You know, that's the thing. Like the flat value of the Sunder, I feel like was a little more impactful there. But 15% is still 15%, and in later stages of the game against tanks, 50% true damage is a lot. And 50% true damage plus 20% damage increase is even more. And if you put this on Nemesis, even with a nerfed ultimate, we'll talk about that later, it's still a lot of extra damage. And you use this first, and then you use Nem ult, and you use the rest of the kit, and you blow someone up, and goodbye. And I don't really like the idea of that. I felt like Sunder was going, you know, in a different direction. And now we're back to, we're giving it damage, we're giving it protection, damage increase. And it kind of counteracts all the damage reduction that we have now, but it's just an awkward item. Let's just put it like that. Teleport glyph no longer allows users to teleport towards. Upgrade version now has the 200-second cooldown as well. And now you can only teleport towards with the upgraded version. So I feel like this is definitely pushing towards Swift Wing. Yes, teleport is still great, and if you have like a Loki against you or something, you probably still want it. You know, you want to stop the split push. But the big benefit of teleport was always that you can take it to get back to lane, or you can take it to go somewhere else with a teleport glyph. You can go take it to secure an objective with your friends. Needing to upgrade that means you spend 500 gold on that. Spending 500 gold on that is something you cannot afford in solo lane. You cannot afford to spend 500 gold on something outside of your item build in the earlier stages of the game. So you cannot rotate to those places, unless you want to teleport to mid tower, which is usually not that beneficial if you're going for a gold fury. And as such, I think we will see a lot less of teleport gilf. Instead, I think we're gonna see, you know, maybe the horrific emblem, especially the shell, maybe even the thunder, all that kind of stuff, and then we see Swift Wing. Because with that long cooldown, no way to reduce it, and only teleporting towards, I would probably choose a lot of relics over teleport glyph. That's what I'm thinking so far. Obviously, still like the convenient version, but, you know, especially with more movement speed items in the game anyways, you'll find ways, I'm sure. Rangas Mask was a high risk, high reward item that was a bit too risky. So we're changing it. New passive. Each time you get an assist, you gain a stack or 2 stacks for a kill. Stacks provide 1% movement speed, 1% cooldown reduction. At 10 stacks, Rangas Mask evolves, gaining 15 penetration. And has a new icon when it evolves. That's interesting. That is a total of 10% movement speed, 10% CDR, 15 penetration. Not very different from the stats I did before. If I recall correctly, it's actually the same or something similar. I think it was a little more stacks before. Nobody built Rangas anyway, so it didn't matter. Now, it is a lot more, you know, progressing through the game. It's still probably not something that most gods would pick, but it's more interesting. I wish what they would have done is give it 1 penetration per level and then 10% cooldown reduction at 10 stacks. Because of one particular reason. And that reason is called Thanatos. Now Thanatos doesn't usually benefit from building much penetration because he has built-in penetration in his kit. So at the same time, with Thanatos, you're not going to get 10 stacks right away, right? You're going to get them over time. And cooldown reduction is not the early game stat you want. Movement speed, you know. But if with Thanatos, like a snowbally character that looks for these kind of items, you want to go for, you know, just 1 early pen item to get that damage going. Because early on your 2 is not going to max for the highest amount of penetration as well. Then you would get the pen through Rangas gradually instead. And then get your ability. And you don't need another pen item unless you want to sell it very late game. And that is not possible this way. Because, you know, there's still a CDR and you need to get 10 stacks first. Overall, I think it's interesting though. There's some gods that I could see it working on. Maybe, again, some of the magical gods as well that somehow find options in this. And that I think could be cool. Definitely better than what it was before. Not a priority pickup for most, I think. Frostbound Hammer. Ranged basic attacks now only apply at 20% movement speed slow. Melee basic attacks with frostbound hammer still slow for the original 30%. Dual players rejoice. This is the only time when you actually see frostbound on ranged, and it was always annoying. This was a highly requested change by many, and in Conquest this pretty much doesn't make a difference unless you have a very, like, you know, wonky build. Whereas in Duel, good stuff. I think this is one of the changes that I really, really like. Rage. Rage is considered an evolving item, obviously, due to its effect. Nothing else, it's just a changed icon here. Lona's Mask now also gets an evolving icon change. Once again. Bamba's Mask. Bamba's Mask. Decreasing healing from defeating a jungle monster from 15% to 10%. So, this thing, it kind of goes in hand with something else. You have to consider that the jungle camps now have more health. When the jungle camps have more health, then Bamba's Mask is going to heal you for more. So, the nerf makes sense. But at the same time, if the enemies have more health, then they also are alive for a longer time to deal damage to you. Meaning, even though they give more health, you also take more damage. So that, all in all, makes this nerf very strange. I don't really see it. Because the idea here is that you want to not have it picked up on as many rolls anymore because they get their healing. But they still do. And it's affecting, for example, mid laners. Because mid laners, the camps that they get the healing from are the mid camps. And the mid camps have no more health and you get less healing. Whereas, you know, the Cyclops camps, I think at least the Hobby camp, I may be wrong here as well. And then the Cyclops minis get more health, so they heal more. And if you have like an ability that clears the minis right away, that's nice. But it forces some guys out of the jungle that would otherwise be able to work there, while also not really pushing away from Bamba's Mask entirely, and nerfing junglers. Like the whole idea, everything that's connected to nerfing the jungle, changing the jungle, obviously nerfs junglers. And again, I would just wish for something that enforces a more jungle-heavy meta for the junglers and not for the rest. And that's not what this item accomplishes, but that's just me. Bancroft Stallion, cost increased by 100, base lifesteal decreased by 5%. Very mixed opinions here by people. Bancroft is still going to be very strong. It still has a lot of power. It's a little more expensive, and it has less lifesteal, which doesn't matter so much for most, because most build for the power. Then again, don't underrate other options. There's a reason why on pro level you see Kronos with Book of the Dead over Bancroft Stallion. And I think, you know, with the new item changes and stuff, we'll see more flexible options. So Bancroft will still be very present. Dynasty Plate Helm. Decreased physical protection from 30 to 25. Decreased penetration from 15 to 10. Now this one is odd. Because Dynasty Plate Helm was always a bloat of stats. It's an incredibly cost-efficient item, allowing for a large spike in both offensive and defensive power. But have you seen much of Dynasty Plate Helm lately? I personally have to say I haven't. It's a great counter item for physical attack, like physical junglers that invade your lane a lot, jungle gank a lot. But I haven't seen it much compared to how often it used to be used. And now we'll see it less. And I'm not quite sure where this is coming from. I may have been missing out on it being picked up maybe in the very last week of the SPL a lot or something. But I can see why this item was nerfed just judging from the stats. But I have not seen it being popular enough to justify the nerfs when, you know, there's Bancroft Stallion. And I would have liked the Dynasty Plate Helm meta as much as that's annoying for a jungler. And I would personally dislike it. I think it's a nice counter item that teaches people to actually pick something that helps them against others. Celestial Legion Helm. New passive. Every 2 seconds you receive a stack of 10 physical protection. Stacks are removed upon taking physical damage from guards. Stacks can only be gained after not taking physical damage from guards for 5 seconds. So this is your go-to choice if you want to not get ganked, apparently. And yeah, this is basically why Dynasty Playtime is nerfed, because Celestial Legion Helm is somehow supposed to be made popular. I mean, sure, I don't see why that was necessary. I feel like somebody just really hated Dynasty Playtime in a mode that was not Conquest, and design team was like, we want this thing out of here. Counters very well in Joust if you're against 2 physicals, something. I don't know. Vampiric Shroud. That, on the other hand, that is like maybe like gives us a partial explanation for the Dynasty Playtime nerf, because that, on the other hand, gets 10 extra physical protection. Removed 4% magical lifesteal. Instead, damaging, not killing, enemies with an ability restores 6 health and 3 mana. Can only trigger once per target per ability. So, what do you want to try? Is hit as many targets as possible with 1 ability, clear that way, and you will get a decent amount of health and mana back every single time you do that. Also, you want to use it if you already lost some health, obviously, unless you don't want the heal. This way, it's an excellent early choice against junglers. And it still has health, so any physical jungler, any physical mid laner even, will have a much harder time against you with Vamp Shroud. Strong buff could potentially even be seen in solo lane. Mark of the Vanguard, I would say, is generally the stronger item, but with this being like the equivalent of Death Toll in a way, for certain gods, I could see this. Certain gods who don't die that easily. Anyways, like Xing Tian, maybe, for example, you know, just giving him a little more of that power, a little more clear potential. Still the health restoration, and he wants to use a lot of abilities anyways. Hits most of the wave most of the time. And so having some physical protection and health along with that, not bad. And then we have Ancient Blade. Added 50 health, decreased attack speed from 10% to 5%. So a little bit of a re-evaluation of where this is supposed to go. Adventurous Blade, decreased health from 15% to from 150 to 100. Removed the 10% attack speed entirely. That's kind of confusing. Wait, why does Ancient Blade have 5% attack speed, but Adventurous Blade has no attack speed at all? Am I looking at the wrong order here? I don't know. I'll take it. I don't understand it. Pretty sure Ancient Blade comes before Adventurous Blade, and that doesn't really make sense. Unless... No. Ancient Blade... It's Ancient Blade, not a tier 1. I'm so confused. I'm just going to leave it at that. Some stat changes that are irritating to me. Cursed Blade. Removed from the game. So, Witchblade is different now. You know, no more Cursed Blade in between. And then we have entire change to that, because we have Toxic Blade now being the enter item. Witchblade is refocused as a more offensive boxing item. And as such, 2050 gold, a relatively cheap item. Decreased health from 200 to 100. Increased attack speed from 15% to 20%. Added 15% lifesteal, magical or physical, aura. Enemies within 55 units have their attack speed reduced by 20%. This is strange, because if you want to make it a boxing item, then why take away 100 health and return for 5% attack speed? This is like an odd item, like an attack speed lifesteal item. It's something that I personally can't place yet, especially when it's again with a little bit of health on it. I feel like that's what makes this tree really awkward, like in this hybrid. Like, you're sacrificing other stats for a little bit of health. And I'm sure it's worth it. But the attack speed reduction is still nice. And I could see this potentially being usable somehow. Just gotta figure out how. Maybe that's actually... If we got the in-between... Oh, no, I'm still not sure about this. Wing Blade, remove 10% attack speed. That goes in line with the Adventurous Blade here. But it still doesn't make sense with the Ancient Blade. Relic Dagger. Also no more attack speed. Seeing a shift in power. Players can now rely on flat reduction of cooldowns for the relics, while also seeing a bit more health to make up for the loss of attack speed. So, we lose 10% attack speed and we get 50 health in return. And this is where it's weird. See how here we lose 100 health and get 5% attack speed. And here we get 50 health and lose 10% attack speed. But oh well. I'm not quite sure how these values have been evaluated against each other. But, new passive, your Relic receive 30 seconds cooldown reduction. 30 seconds is a lot. On certain item choices, Horrific emblem. This is a lot. Don't underestimate half a minute of a relic. Don't underestimate this on supports either. I do think that this gives this item quite some potential, both in support and in solo because of the health on the item. And then we have Demonic Grip. Demonic Grip, increase the magical power from 60 to 65. Decrease the attack speed from 20% to 15%. This is again like it's balancing out stats a little bit. Added 7% movement speed. I guess rings get movement speed now, you know? I'm okay with this. I don't mind. I think Demonic Grip will be stronger through this. And this may be a way for Freya to kind of try and get around the hasten thing a little bit. But I'm not sure yet. And, oh yeah, worth pointing out about Relic Dagger, it's also very cheap. Telekine's Ring. Decreased cost from 2,800 to 2,700 on a gold. Magical power decreased by 10 in return. Okay. Added 10% movement speed. Okay. But again, this could be targeted at Freya. If you're doing this with like Demonic Grip, Telekines, you can somehow maybe avoid the hasten, especially because she still has a slow, you know. Remove 20% attack speed. Maybe not targeted Freya. I don't know. So, it's just super weird. New passive. Every time you deal damage with an ability, you get a stack of 20 power up to maximum of 3 stacks. The stacks last for 5 seconds. So you get up to 60 extra power, but it's still in an AA item tree. But no longer attack speed oriented. So it's like a movement speed item with a lot of power if you stack it up. But it works better for ticking damage actually. But then again, is it strong enough? Like, you get 70 power and then up to 60, 130. Bancrafts does so much, gives you so much more power, you know? And has some lives instead of movement speed. And it's cheaper. I don't see how I'm supposed to properly use this. I don't really understand it. But it's different because you don't need to lose health first. And maybe you can combine it with Bancrafts. I don't know. Telekines, I really don't know. It's in a strange place. Enchanted Ring decreased cost by 200, removed 15% attack speed, and added 5% movement speed. It goes in line with these two changes here, right? Ridgestone decreased cost from 700 to 600. Decreased magical protection from 10 to 20. Decreased magical power from 20 to 10. More towards a protection area here, understandable. It was just a bit too aggressive and not picked up enough, I guess. It's like an early choice or something at least. Wardstone decreased cost by 100. Decreased magical power from 30 to 20. Added 50 health. And then Voidstone going in the same direction. Decreased cost by 50. Decreased magical power by 20. But it still has the magical protection reduction, which is a lot more important because this is for Guardians. And Guardians don't have good scalings anyway. They have the base values. Added 150 health. 150 health on an item that's not that expensive is huge. Do not, under any circumstances, underestimate this. 150 health, 50 gold less, and a little less power. I take 150 health over 20 power for any protection focused character in any situation. And this goes for solo lane Guardians. This goes for supports like aggressive supports, Ares. This is really good. Seriously, this is really good. Do not underestimate Voidstone. It's not this kind of like cheesy pickup when I want to play support and I won't deal damage anymore. Because this is really good and it helps your team a lot. And then there's Genji's Guard. Genji's Guard. Increased the MP5 from 20 to 40. Alright. But added 150 health. Once again, same thing here. In Genji's Guard, I love this item. Increased the passive cooldown reduction from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. I think this is really good. I'm thinking of Willish, especially. I'm always thinking of Willish with Genji's Guard. But Raven, I'm thinking everyone who can make use of a little bit of tankiness. 150 health. 150 health is so much. 150 health is so nice. Like 100 health is like, yeah, okay, as you get that on starter. But 150 if you don't pay more. You know, but if you get like 100 health on an item that costs 2,000 gold, yes. But if you get 150 health on an item that's already somewhat cheaper and has protective stats of other sorts and has utility and has MP5 and everything, then you want Genji's Guard, and then the MP5 is just so good here. I think this item is just amazing. And it wasn't for a long time, and Tyr is gonna love this as well, for example. Onihunter's Garb. Onihunter's Garb increased the MP5 by 10, added 100 health as well. Increased magical passive damage mitigation from 15 to 20%, decreased the internal cooldown from 90 seconds to 6 seconds. I gotta be honest, Onihunter's Garb is so awkward that I actually don't remember the passive at this point. Stats, you know, once again, extra health for free. That's good. Extra mitigation. I think it's like whenever you take damage from an ability, you get the mitigation. Or no, or if your allies deal damage to an enemy around you or something. It was very awkward last time I checked. Could be better now. Could be better now, especially with a low cooldown. Has better overall stats for sure. Though I think if I have the choice, I'd probably go Genji's unless I really need the mitigation here. For that, it can be very good. I think now with that lower cooldown. Another one of those gotta see. Would be better if I actually remember the passive. And then we have our Kuang. Our Kuang has been very weak as of late, as you may have noticed, because he doesn't get that early game. He's just looking for late game. General, increased mana from 200 to 240, increased mana per level from 36 to 38, increased MP5 from 4.5 to 4.8, increased MP5 per level from 0.2 to 0.41. Lot of extra mana for this man. And that's basically because of his passive. Because his passive is completely getting reworked. And before that, that was kind of, you know, a crutch thing that helped him get past mana issues. Now we have this. New passive, King's Sword. Each time Kuang successfully uses his dragon form to execute an enemy god, he gains a stack, that increases magical power and lifesteal. Stacks up to 3 times. Stacks are permanent. And that is quite crucial. The power here is a total of 45 magical power. If you look at his old passive, I compared the numbers a little bit. I think it's actually not that crazy. It sounds like a lot, you know, but on our Kuang, who's not performing very well at the moment, and who's still looking for late game with this, it's not doing all that much. You gotta consider here that the power, it doesn't quite compete with the extra percentage damage that he had before in most situations, and as such, you will probably not take more damage from our Kuang than you did before, rather less, especially early on. In return, he gets magical lifesteal. And not too little, 15%. And that works with us too. So, what I'm thinking is there's a bunch of magical power items that have lifesteal now, that have attack speed now. There's this kind of new, you know, magical haste and Fatalis now, which does work for our Kuang. Because what he does is he tries to like nuke you down with his dragons. He gets the dragons out really fast if you go for AA our Kuang, which we used to see in Season 2, I think. And with these dragons, you need those 4 seconds to hit all the dragons, roughly. Maybe less, depending on your attack speed and everything. But then you're out of there anyways. If you haven't killed someone after using all your dragons, and your 3, and probably your 1, or maybe the execute at that point, then you're not going to kill them. So, for him, I think the new haste patch could be really nice. And we could see AA Ao Kuang coming back. The issue of AA Ao Kuang, the main issue, is that he is so easy to lock down now that there's so much CC in the game, even more than before. And that he's like prone to stuff like slows and similar. So what Ao Kuang has to do in order to work with AAs is get something like Magi's Blessing. But if you get Magi's Blessing and you invest into these newer items and then focus on the lifesteal, get like one big lifesteal item on top of this, whether it be Bankrupts or Poly or whatever, probably Poly, Bankrupts even with an increase of damage, then this could actually be a lot bigger than you would expect. The next one is Bakasura. Bakasura seeing target change, blah, 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 blah. Eat minion. Large monsters that can only be eaten at 33% will provide 2 minions to regurgitate. You know the minions, it's the same as before. I don't know why that was like talked about so much. But they provided 2 minions now, giving him more stacks for his ultimate. I originally thought, like, okay, this change, whatever. Because what we heard is the cooldown for his ultimate is decreased, but not by what? The cooldown of his ultimate is actually decreased by quite a lot. It goes down to 70 seconds. That's a very short cooldown for an ultimate like that. And I don't like putting Bakasura more in the direction of being a complete ult bot. But hell, he's gonna be a lot of trouble when he's this ult bot now. He's gonna be out there with his ult in pretty much every team fight, and he's more likely to have at least some stacks. This is more towards the later stages of the game, not that early. But for those stages, I could see some potential there. I could definitely see some potential there. Having that almost every minute will do something for him. Then again, Sprint is back in its old state, which means that enemies have an easier time to get out. As long as anyone has Sprint, surely, if they Sprint beforehand, they could still cleanse the slow, but now they're slow immune, which is always a different story. Any build that has a frostbound in it, which exists for Bakasura, it's worth saying they do exist sometimes, will not work as well because you can't reapply slows. Or if you effectively trying to abuse the enemy sprint, getting that out beforehand, that would not work either. And the main point here is that sprint was just not picked up at all because it was considered weak, and it will be picked up again. And if you see a Bakasura, you just be like, I just get sprint. Long cooldown on the sprint though, so you have to abuse that with a short cooldown of the ult. Bellona. If anyone is surprised by this, you have not been paying attention. Base power reduced from 39 to 36, a little less early damage, a little less early aggression. And bludgeon increased the cooldown from 14 and scaling down to 10 seconds, so you have to max it first for the full effectiveness. This will hit her quite decently. What we have to read out here is this point below. It's also worth noting that Osiris did not receive an adjustment this patch. While he was the popular pick in competitive alongside Bellona, he did not have the same record as Bellona did, while also having a poor performance across other levels of play. Osiris is often a pro favorite, but even after his recent buff, he still struggles outside of the competitive scene. We continue to watch him closely before making any specific adjustments. Osiris needs nerfs. I am very convinced of that. Especially with like the new horrific emblem, he will need nerfs, and with the other damage reduction mitigation that comes into the game, there's so much survivability for him. He's just so gonna be in the backline bullying everyone. And yes, he is very hard to play effectively to the same level as he is in competitive outside of competitive. I'm not saying he's very hard to play as a god, but rather to make his kit work to its fullest degree. And that's where, you know, a lot of people struggle. But that doesn't mean that just because, you know, it's outside of the competitive scene, doesn't mean that he shouldn't get a nerf, because otherwise all our competitive matches are going to have Osiris or an Osiris ban. I don't see the logic being applied here, because by the same logic you cannot buff bottom tier gods, and that's exactly what happened to Bakasura. Bakasura was buffed in a way that mostly actually affect him in lower levels of play, even though it might affect him in higher levels of play as well. But, you know, he's popped something in low elo casuals and not in competitive. So why would he get a buff and Bellona would then, you know, Osiris would then not get a nerf? It's just two different standards here that are applied. And I'm glad that the standard is applied for Bakasura, but I'm not glad that the standard isn't applied for Osiris. Chiron gets a buff. Training exercise now applies a mark for masterful shot to all targets hit. This is actually, I think, more impactful than it would sound. Because, you know, it does help him clear a lot, you know, with his marking every minion in a wave, as well as, you know, being able to hit someone in a team fight a little easier. If they may be like body blocked by someone else, you can still hit both. So I think this is actually a solid buff. It sounds like not so much, but I think it's actually a pretty solid buff. This one, let me drink something first. Kronos Wheel of Time has been relocated to Accelerate, to show the passive description. But Kronos becomes empowered as time flows around him. Every 2 minutes he gains a stack that increases his magical power. Stacks up to 25 times, stacks are permanent, each stack being 3 magical power. 75 extra power max. In 60 minutes. Huh? Is that correct? No, sorry, not correct. In 50 minutes. If you're gonna drag out a game, you might as well play Kronos, right? The thing is that Kronos wasn't weak to begin with. Kronos didn't have issues. People didn't know how to play him. But he's already getting this new haste in the ring, basically, which helps him, gives him his old 2 back. And I like the idea of giving him an actual passive. I don't like the idea of giving him up to 75 power for free. And I don't know how that had to happen. But Kronos is out there now. Isis. Funeral Rites. Stacks are no longer lost upon death. Isis will now gain 10% CDR upon reaching 10 stacks. Meaning you get 20 HP 5, 20 MP5 after 10 death around you. Tell your teammates to feed for you so you can get your stacks. And you can get your CDR. Definitely helps a little bit towards late game. I think this is very strong. She has a very good early game already. Good mid game. And her late game is where she falls off a little bit because she has that ult for the secure, but you know, there's a lot of anti-heal and Her kit overall is just not as scary as some others in late game. With this, I do think she will be more scary because she just gets 10% CDR and helps the team all the time, you know. It's a free, basically a free solve or free hardwood almost, so yeah, just region-wise, obviously. The meme. The meme becomes reality. Kuzenbo. Nene Kappa. Targets hit by the thrown Nene Kappa are slowed by 20%. This is the CC everyone has been asking for. This is quite a significant change because now he has more CC, more peel in his kit, which justifies him a lot more as a solo laner. Sumo Slam increases turn radius, allowing for sharper turning. Much easier to hit an enemy this way. You had the awkward situation where the other guys go like, the enemy's here, and you would go like straight to them, and then it's like, no, fuck you, and you're just like, I'm getting you, and they're just like, no, goodbye, and then you're just off. You know, that's a lot better now, I'm assuming at least, with the increased radius. And the cooldown gets decreased for maxing this, which actually makes it rewarding to max this as well if you want to, whereas before it was just flat damage, so also impactful. Worry Grave adjusted the knock-up from this ability. Targets will now be knocked up into the air more and pushed to the side less. I actually talked about this, I think, on the tier list just yesterday. I thought this was, you know, I was saying that it would be really nice if they would be knocked up more, but then again, it could easily be too strong because it makes it so easy to target and it's a long knockup that way. It just happened. And I think because this just happened, I don't know how far the knockup will be exactly, but with this being more of a knock up, it makes it not only easier to control where they're going, but also makes it a lot easier for your enemies to land abilities. And that's scary. I think, as much as Kuzenbo was a meme before, that's a lot he gets this patch. He gets a slow, he gets a shorter cooldown on his main easy CC, he gets an easier way to apply that, and his ultimate is more impactful. So I do think this does a lot. And I would not be surprised if he's actually picked up now. Depends a little bit on how well the old works now. Ne Zha. The fix we've been asking for years apparently was very hard to fix, and it is finally done. Enemy players hit by Windfire Wheels now have an additional 0.25 seconds after the hit to use Purification Beats to avoid the ability. This matches the current animation more accurately. Enemies hit by Ne Zha will not be able to fire beats on the way up into the air. If you miss the window to escape, you will have your beats protected to be used later. So that means it's more likely for you to be able to cancel out Ne Zha's ult. The ult, like just spamming the ult as Ne Zha is a lot harder to do after the sash if they don't beat immediately. And overall, you are able to save your beats better as well if you go up and it's blocked. What irritates me here is that Ne Zha, while being very strong at the moment to be fair, so maybe that's why, doesn't get the compensation that people have been requesting where he doesn't have full CC immunity and his ultimate at all times. I think that is still the case. I may have not seen it. Like, I haven't seen it in a while. I may not have realized that it was fixed entirely, but I thought there was still one part of that caused this issue. I don't know if this was maybe fixed along with this and it's just not in the description. I would think it would be fair to like fix both sides of this, but it's definitely a good direction to go in. Then we have Nemesis. Nemesis gets a very different direction. Swift Vengeance increased scaling from 50% to 6%, meaning 30% per hit. So you have to dash through an enemy twice for the 6%. Still relatively low scaling. Slice and Dice increased the base damage from 280 to 340. Increased the scaling from 50 to 60%. And reduced the slow from 50 to 30% flat. Now, I am not sure how this affects the center and the side damage of this, but I do think that this is not bad. So again, a little more scaling, a little more benefit from power, which especially means that that Shift the Shield, which already was value on her regarding the protection stats and how it generally works, at least according to some pros and how much it was picked up, will now be more beneficial because it obviously works off scaling and not off base values. In return, Divine Judgment gets a nerf to the protection shred from 50% to 30%. Question here is, does this mean that the steal is also 30%? It would be likely, but it says shred there, and yeah, I don't quite know what to feel about this. What generally is worth pointing out here, more lane clear, more jungle clear from rank 1, more scaling, more base damage, less slows, less revolving around slows, which isn't necessarily that bad when you consider that Sprint was nerfed so heavily that really you're not gonna do that much with the slows anyways. They're just gonna get cleansed a lot more. So a lot more damage on Nemesis in a different way with some winners for different builds. If you still want the same thing, you want to have Sunder, and if you use Sunder first, then you basically get the same protection shred overall, and you do more damage with the Divine Judgment. And I think what is more easy to do is potentially blowing up people quite easily with the ult, with a very interesting combination of items. We'll see if that works very well in practice. Nu Wa, Clay Soldiers have been readjusted. Nu Wa can now specify which enemy target she wants to Clay Soldiers to pursue by marking them with the ability targeter. The ability targeter is 40 units, like ranged. Clay Soldiers will pursue the marked target until dead. Nu Wa may fire this ability without a targeter if the marked target dies. Clay Soldiers will attack enemies who do damage to Nu Wa first or close enemies, so that's the old AI basically. Clay Soldiers will now dash through other targets, debuffing them, so everyone on the way. If you hit the back archers in a wave, that will debuff the front minions, only stopping at the marked target. It's a magical protection reduction, I think. And then, you know, you get them right to the target, and that's huge. It sounds maybe not that much if you haven't played Nu Wa much, but it's huge to be able to specifically select your target, send the Clay Soldiers there, and blow them up. Because nothing is stopping them from going there anymore, and that's going to do a lot for her. I would say this probably puts Nu Wa above the point of average balance very, very quickly from where she was. Just because it's so much control for the Clay Soldiers. Raijin. We're getting towards the end here, by the way. New passive, Charge Tempo. For every 5 abilities cast, Raijin reduces the cooldown of all abilities currently on cooldown by 1 second. Alright. New passive, better than the old one in my opinion, and you'll see why this is being made later on. Because of Storm, targeter is a bit improved so you can aim it better. The shot radius width is increased. The range is increased a little bit. The damage is increased a little bit. The scaling is decreased a little bit. The damage range is almost the same, like overall base damage and scaling combined. The cost is decreased a little bit so you can use it a bit more effectively. So this is your main clear with more damage, more range, more radius. In the early stages especially, helping you out there. So that's a buff. Then we have Raiju. Deals damage over time. Also gets a damage increase actually. 220, and more of damage increase. 220. Instead, it will now do 55 ticking damage, but that's an extra tick, so it's 275 damage, if I understand it correctly. And slightly decreased scaling by 5% to 65% scaling, but overall this should be more damage most of the time. Now also applies a 15% slow to marked target. When Raiju is triggered, the slow and damage are spread to nearby enemies. So you mark them, they're slowed already. That makes it easier to hit them with an ability afterwards. You hit them with an ability, and the slow spreads around. Slow is increased by 15% on the marked target for a 30% slow. So they are slowed by 30% and everyone else is 15%. So it's a lot more utility in that way, even though it's not necessarily crazy more damage because it's a dot now and you can avoid dots a little bit easier. I've talked about this in the past. Mana cost slightly decreased by 10 and cooldown decreased from 15 to 11. So you'll use this a lot more. And that goes in hand with his passive as well, which also reduces his cooldown even more. So like ideally you can use this without any CDR twice within 10 seconds. If you have CDR, you can use this twice within 6 seconds roughly. So I think, I'm not sure which way this applies. Yeah, it should be 6 seconds roughly, not quite precisely. It's actually even a little less. Thunder Crash is now targetable until he fades away to his new location. This was something that was specifically changed because he was always interrupted out of it. This is being reverted basically, so he's going to be able to get hit again and interrupted probably as well because he's targetable. So no more free Aegis there. But Taiko drums improve the sounds, visuals, blah blah blah. You can tell all 3 different drums now. Projectile speed reduced from 120 per second to 100 per second. So a little bit slower. Fire duration increased from 4.5 to 7 seconds. You have a lot longer to choose which form of the ult you want to go for. You can bait out escapes by just using your ult and then, you know, hit them afterwards when they don't expect it anymore, basically. Reduce the damage on beat 2 Taunt and beat 3 Fear from 50% to 30%. So we have a little bit of damage increase in other places. We have a damage reduction here if you choose to go for the utility. Overall, this guy has a lot more utility. This is what Raijin was supposed to be from the start. He's got a slow now. He's got cooldown reduction. He uses abilities more often. He's got the fear and the taunt that he can use for a very long time with 7 seconds in a team fight. That's huge. And he still has a little bit more clear potential at the same time. Raijin, I would say, is not necessarily buffed. Especially with Thunder Crash, for example, being a clear nerf here. But I do think that this will put Raijin in a new direction, and he will probably get further adjustments down the road if he's not showing what he's supposed to be. But like I think for example, I think the slow will stay most likely. I think that's what we're seeing with Raijin here, and we will see if we actually see a utility mage being something. And then we got Sobek. Blessing of Night, increased duration from protection buff from 3 seconds to 6 seconds. Sobek was a little bit, weaker than many other supports, though not completely trash. And now he gets more protection. So the description here, Blessing of the Nile is getting a nice quality of life adjustment. Previously, the Blessing of the Nile would fall off while in the full duration of Sobek's ultimate, which felt awkward. Now Blessing of the Nile lasts 6 seconds, allowing for time for Sobek to land a new ability or fully charge his ultimate on a target. So a lot less punishment there if you just get your combo off and then you want to use the ult or whatever. So that's nice. I like it. I think it's a good change for him. Susanoo. New passive, Gathering Storm. Each time Susanoo successfully deals damage to an enemy, to at least one enemy guard with an ability, he gains a stack. At 4 stacks, his next ability hits an enemy guard. That hits an enemy guard will deal bonus damage. Stacks last for 5 seconds. So you have to time those stacks right. You have to get those 4 stacks, which I'm not quite sure how the as it is deals damage. The ticks from his 3, for example, should be able to stack this quite easily. And then bonus damage is 25 plus 60% of your physical power. So I think this is a decent amount of extra damage. But Stormcutter gets a base damage increase, decrease for, I think, both hits. From up to 160 to up to 140. So especially higher ranks are nerfed here. Decreased physical power scaling from 65% to 55%. Sorry, it's getting hard. So, the nerf is a buff. I don't know yet. I need to see. It feels like a buff because of that 60% extra scaling. It's a lot more than you lose in that regard. But it feels a little more avoidable maybe. And also it takes away his ult passive, obviously. He doesn't have the extra movement speed anymore, which makes him a lot easier to catch. But he still has 2 mobility abilities and a good CC to keep you away. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't know where that puts him. And that brings us to the last god. Ullr. Bladed Arrow Thrown Axe. Mana cost reduced from 50 up to 70 to 50 at all ranks. You can use that a little more often. Expose weakness Invigorate. Reduced cooldown from 18 seconds to 16 seconds. Alright. Solid. Power changed from 10 to 50 to 25 to 45. Much more rewarding to put at least 1 point into it early on. Which usually wasn't really used at all. And that is it. A quick glance over at what we will see at the Project Olympus in the next patches. For those that are interested, what mostly annoys me about this patch is that there's no nerfs to the Krononos and no nerfs to Osiris. And what's going to be interesting is how all these changes actually play out. I hope for some good stuff for the jungles. Multi-queuing for casual modes. We actually didn't have that in the patch notes. Also, there's an allied statue apparently in the Conquest map now. So that's pretty damn cool. Then we all covered the rest of these. A little console fix here for notifications. And then we'll have fantasy points gifting. We'll have pre-guard selection, band selections, where you can say which guard you would like to play and you would like your team leader to ban. I'm not quite sure if this is only for ranked. It says ranked refresh. But it seems that way, so you call the guard that you'd like to pick early on in the lobby, and then you see if that works out. Console leaderboard, guard leaderboards will be adjusted just to make it more understandable. Ranked placement will add a new targeting division that shows the player for matchmaking purpose where they are being rated. So kind of, it's basically like showing your elo maybe a little bit, but not really. I wish they would just place you there like a normal elo system, but oh well. Buff timers will show up on the minimap. Minion count will be added to towers, showing you how many minions are, like, of your minions are on the tower attacking it. So you know when to back out when there's only one minion left. And then in 4.5 we see various console updates, quick view, stats on the HUD, LB, RB, controller mapping for the ultimate, individual guard history, end of the match, lobby option to invite party or add friend, aim acceleration and dead zones configurable. And on PC you get an auto popper for your daily reward login. Daily login reward. Daily reward dialogue. And that is it for the mid-season patch. Jesus Christ, this was a long patch. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. I will go catch my breath and find my voice now. If you're not subscribed yet, feel free to click that sub button and maybe the bell. It really helps me out. It would be really nice. See you for the next one tomorrow. Duke Sloth, goddamn, out.